Well, to our first conversation for the day, the federal government has allocated 4.2 billion naira to the Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited for the year 2022. This was disclosed in the 2022 budget details, and this obviously is a follow-up to what the Minister of Mines and Steel Development said in July, that Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited will function to capacity before the end of this administration. That's the administration led by President Muhammadu Buhari. Well, what should Nigerians expect from this allocation? We have Mr. Ajaokuta, the Managing Consultant and Chief Executive Officer of Flame Academy and Consulting Limited, joining us for that conversation. Good to have you, Mr. Demizwe. Good morning.
Morning, Ini. Always my pleasure to join you.
Good to have you, especially when it's not virtual.
Yeah, well, we mix everything now.
It's hybrid.
Virtual and in person. Yeah, until things clear properly. So
so Ajaokuta Steel obviously has a lot of potentials to deal with a lot of things that are being imported in the manufacturing space at this time. So having 4.2 billion naira to revive that steel mill should be applauded. But people have gone back to say, well, this is not the first time we're seeing allocation, for the revival of the steel mill, and so what will make this different? So when you heard about this, what was your first thoughts?
For me, it's nothing out of the ordinary. And in as much as we, as a nation, have to allocate capital and resources to different sectors of the economy, for me, the point is, what is the purpose of this allocation? And if you check in the past few years, there has been this kind of allocation to that entity in the past years. But what is very sad to note in it is that most of that allocation is to maintain the salary payment, overhead, allowances, and social contribution for the redundant manpower we have kept in that entity over the years, without them producing anything. So there's nothing spectacular about it. It's nothing to celebrate. In fact, it's something to be very sad about, because the real action to be taken to make that place work after it's been abandoned for how many years now, that action is not a normal budgetary allocation. That action has to involve a strong handshake between an external party, a private entity, that can drive that organization, in the trying to either privatizing it or concentrating it. No, several governments have made efforts to try to make that place work. But the story of Ajaokuta Steel Company Limited is the story of, ineptitude in Nigeria, the lack of capacity, of the public sector and the successive leaders we've got in this country to think strategically, to understand very strategic business issues and decisions, and also understand the macroeconomic and technical and even social impact of the decisions that we take as politicians in the life of a nation. That project, if you don't, if you remember, was muted in 1979 by the Shagari government, and the idea then was to strategically position Nigeria as a major provider of important raw materials for aircraft, car production, and other technological things. So, by that time, it was meant to drive Nigeria's active play in the technology revolution going on around the world. And if we had got it right, by now, most of the supplies of plane, the aircraft manufacturing instrument, car manufacturing, and of course, then we had a number of car manufacturing companies having interest in Nigeria, Volkswagen and the rest of them.
Assembling.
So assembling was very strategic at that point. And then we failed to make it start. We actually got it almost ready at 98% completion before the issues arose with the German.
Yeah, but because I think it was in 2019 we had a technical audit.
There have been several issues right from 1979 up to 1994 when it was almost about to start before the issue started, and then all the way in between nothing was done. And then even the Obasanjo government tried to concession the place, the Russian company and all of that, and then that held on until Musa Yar'Adua came in, and it felt that it wasn't properly done, and the company was, asset stripping and, acting against the interests of Nigeria, and that matter went to court. So what Buhari's government has tried to do is to see how to settle the matter in court, and then they made a promise back then in 2016 that this place will work before this government goes.
Yes.
5 years down the line, nothing different has been done, no change. As they promised us, everything has remained the same way. And these allocations you see continue to drain this nation in entities that produce nothing for us. It's just a normal allocation, much of which is for the current expenditure, and a little capital budget for the normal maintenance. And human beings like you and I still go in there every day, I suppose, doing nothing. From money. Those in accounting are accounting for nothing because we don't produce anything. No sales are made. Nothing is done. People come in different departments and they are there idle. And that is the story of this nation. Story of celebrating mediocrity and redundancy. Story of wickedness and immorality. People are meant to be engaged and they're not doing anything and still go there.
So the minister has once again, I mean, that was in July, though, expressed the determination of this administration to ensure, you know, that it works before the administration comes to an end. You have mentioned there have been attempts at concessioning it. You've mentioned privatization, getting the private sector involved.
To drive it.
Yes, but this is a huge project, you know, which will require huge capital, you know, so this might also limit the involvement or the number of capable private sector players, you know, in it. From your perspective, from where you are sitting, how do you see these projects getting, you know, jump-starting? They've tried to work on the legal disruptions and disputes that we had on the issue.
To be very honest with you, nothing much has been done except the meeting our president had in, I think, Russia 2019 to restart the discussion towards how to concession it. Had a meeting with Vladimir Putin, Russian president, towards making sure that happened. But maybe with COVID and all of that, everything was stalled. Looking at it today and 2023, when this government must end, you know that once we turn over the leaf of this year and the next year, political activities start and attention moves away from infrastructure and all of that. So to be real and to say it the way it is, this Ajaokuta Steel Company issue continues beyond this government. I don't see the ability and capacity and political willingness and business savviness that is required to get into that agreement that will enable these people coming early enough to do all the work. They have to do an audit. They said 60 or so engineers are meant to come in. You know what you left off 1979? Remember, these are engineering equipment. By now, wouldn't they have all rusted away? Many of them damaged, and you have to reassess them. The technology of that time that's required to make it efficient might have all changed. Even to be sincere with ourselves, the relevance of that entity in today's economy, is it really going to be cost-effective for us? If we're able to even start the production of liquid steel, do we still have a market for it? And the current supply chain, will it twist just to favor us? Or are we going to struggle to find market for it?
No, well, you know, when we talk about market, because I had a conversation with some manufacturers. I mean, things as small as travel bags, you know, they have to import the bolts and the nuts.
Everything.
You know, and this, I mean, Ajaokuta can actually deal, even if this is the only thing it does for the nation, it cuts a lot of foreign exchange that is being sent out of the country.
I totally agree with you. Ajaokuta Steel Company, whether it's Delta Steel and the one we have in Kaduna, is also very big. If we have them, there's no doubt that they will still help, even if it's not the original intention of producing liquid steel for aircraft and cars and all of that, because the car manufacturing companies have left us, and only a few are here. Was it a year or two ago? Volkswagen went to Rwanda. So, but they could still be tailored to produce other important input materials for the manufacturing sector of this country. And mind you, Nigeria's manufacturing capacity is so large that we can actually feed the whole of Africa. And when we were having the US and China trade dispute, Nigeria could come in to do a lot of things for US that China could not do for them in the midst of that dispute. And these are opportunities, and in the current African Continental Free Trade Agreement, Nigeria is being looked upon by the rest of Africa as a big brother that will, fill in the gap in the manufacturing segment of the African economy, whereby they expect a lot of things to be produced here and shipped to the rest of Africa. But today we are still struggling.
And we do have the human resources. We do have the human resources.
We have the human resources, but we don't have the technical, we don't have the quality leadership to drive and harness these resources to make this country a giant of Africa that it should be.
So if the private sector were to be involved, well, how do you see this happening? I mean, Assuming everything is in place and we want to get it working.
The private sector, whether domestic experts or foreign experts, is always, the game changer if you want to drive infrastructure development and, the growth of an economy. But Nigeria, for one reason or the other, the political space, the public sector has remained very reluctant to release projects with private sector. And when we discuss the modalities, concessioning modalities, whether it's build, operate, and transfer, all the PPP models, most times we discuss them with some selfish interest, on the table, vested interest. People are trying to, make agreements that will support their personal enrichment and their families, for years. And nobody thinks Nigeria. And at the end of the day, those agreements get stuck, and stuck. Whether it's about East-West Road or about Lagos-Ibadan Road or all other projects that are meant to be, moved to PPP model, we are unable to create the legal framework and the economic will to allow these people run. And when they start running, we quickly come back and say, oh, they're not doing it right, and we take it back. And then, because we're always filling in our contractual obligation, we say one thing today, concession, and tomorrow another government reverses it. Many investors are now very worried and careful in dealing with Nigeria's, contracts, like PPP engagement. So that's also what is slowing down our huge infrastructure need in the midst of a very big gap that requires trillions, hundreds of trillions of naira to meet up in the next few years.
So we need to change the perception to attract more private
Nigeria
sector.
needs to begin to elect leaders who may not have all the degrees, but who have the capacity to run businesses. Leaders who have some background in private sector engagements. Either they have run businesses successfully, or they have the capacity to understand business discussions, business strategies, vision, and direction. Nigeria is still electing leaders based on...
But ministers can do that. I mean, don't you think ministers... That's why we have Minister of Trade.
At the end of the day, the buck ends on the desk of the president. And if you have a president who cannot grasp what we are discussing, you can do all your proposals, and at the end of the day, it ends there. So we need leaders who can think in the 21st century manner, not leaders who are trying to trace the root of cows when people are traveling to the moon to get things done.
All right, Mr. Ademizwe, thank you so much for being a part of the show. The Managing Consultant and Chief Executive Officer of Flame Academy and Consultant Limited, Mr. Oji Ademizwe, joins us to share his thoughts on the Ajaokuta steel. This morning, we'll take a break. After that, we'll go to the FX commodities market. Do stay with us. It's Business Morning on Channel.